everybody, welcome back. If you don't know, my name is Cooper, and today I'm going to be doing a plant tour of all the plants that I currently have in my house. I'm also going to talk about just plant styling in general and how to incorporate plants using interior design so they look intentional and correct and beautiful and you love them. So yeah. And I wanted to start off by talking about the plants that I get the most questions about, which are by far these Phakia edulices. If you can't see, I have one on my coffee table right here, and then I also have one on my side table, which is over here. These are actually, the same kind of plant. These two plants are part of the dogbanes family, I think it's called. Also, if I butcher any of these names, you guys, I'm still gaining knowledge on plants. But anyway, these two are pretty new. I got them a couple months ago after I'd moved in, and I saw them at the plant shop, and I just thought, wow, these are really beautiful. I just loved that they have a bulb at the bottom, kind of, and then they have it's almost like a tree. It almost reminds me of a bonsai a little bit. In the way that they grow, they grow out very far, and they just have these really long skinny branches. These plants, I believe, mid to direct sunlight, so I keep them right in my living room, right in front of the window. My apartment is designed in the way that there's only windows on one end of it, so I have to be very strategical about the kind of plants that I have and where they're going to go for them to survive. And surprisingly, these guys are actually succulents, which I didn't even know. I thought that was really interesting. I believe they're from, if I'm correct, either Madagascar or Eastern Africa. Alright, so the next plant I'm going to talk about is my Dracaena marginata. If you saw my last video, this is very new. I only got this a couple days ago. These are super tolerable to bright light, which is why I have it in front of my window. And if you have south or east facing windows, I have east facing windows, I would highly recommend getting a Dracaena plant or just a corn plant in general, because they're a lot more adept to survival in those kinds of conditions. I used to have a mahogany tree in here, and unfortunately it died because of all the bright light that it was getting, and it's still winter. So that was definitely not going to work, unfortunately. So another thing about these guys is they're really great air purifiers, apparently. I mean, I don't know how much I'm supposed to speak to that, but I do live in a city, so, I'll take what I can get in regards to a plant that will purify my air. Also, these guys are super easy to take care of because you only have to water them every 2 or 3 weeks, every 2 weeks in the summer, every 3 weeks in the winter. So they're a really great low maintenance plant, and they're really great if you are not good at taking care of plants, or you're just busy, or you travel a lot. These are wonderful. They also have a really cool sculptural look to them. They grow in all kinds of different shapes and can really take on so many different forms and so many different looks. And I think that's something that I just generally really love about specific types of plants. I really love when they have the ability to change into a different form or a different shape, and be almost a completely unrecognizable plant. I think that's pretty cool. So I really love this guy. I think it's a great addition to my space, and I'm happy, and I know it's going to work in here. So I'm very glad about that. The next plant I'm going to be talking about is my Emedrium back here. This plant is pretty unique. I had never seen it, and I just thought it was super cool and super unique. I know these guys are part of the Arums family of plants, if you guys know anything about that, but it looks really similar, I would say, to a Monstera, but don't get confused in regards to that because it is an Emedrium. I also really liked when I saw this at the plant shop that it was kind of growing up this moss pole. I thought that was really cool and great for, structural integrity. And, I think moss poles or just stick or using wire or whatever is really great to kind of morph whatever plant you have into a cool shape, or just taking that plant and modifying it to fit the way you want it to look in the space and how you want it to be presented. I would say another thing to keep in mind is whether or not you want to make the decision to rotate them on a regular basis. Personally, for me, I do not rotate my plants. I find it very tedious and annoying, but I do consider where the plants need to grow. For example, if one side is particularly looking a little bit drab, I will move it just a little bit so it'll encourage more growth if it gets more light on that side, or whatever. But generally, I like to stick to very low maintenance things because, I'm a person, we have busy lives. We can't spend all day at home taking care of plants or making plant videos. So, well, apparently I do, but yeah, it's totally up to you in regards to that. Now we're going to move on to the plants that I have in my office. The next plant I wanted to talk about is actually one of my favorite houseplants to have. I've gone through so many of these just throughout moving to different places. I've lived in 4 different places within the last year, so a lot of moving around for me, which causes a lot of death to plant life. So, yes. This guy is moderately new. I got the plant a couple weeks ago. I've had this pot for a long time. One of my favorite things to do, speaking of, is, if you're on a budget, you don't need to go to one of these fancy plant stores that have all these unique plants to make your house look nice and have like some essence of life around. One of my favorite things to do is to just, if I have a plant die or something like that, which, I try my best to make not happen, but it does happen, I'll just go to Trader Joe's, I'll find something that I like, and, I think is great, because I think one of the worst things to have in your house is dead plants. I think it brings down the mood. I think it clouds up the energy, or whatever people say, and the vibes are not good. You know what I mean? It's like those teenagers who receive roses from their partner and then they like keep them until they die because they think it looks cool, when in reality it's just giving like, ooh, you know what I mean? Anyways, let's stay on topic here. The next plant I want to talk about is my lovely little asparagus fern. I actually really love these. I think they're so pretty. I think they just have like a really prominent presence in spaces, I think, just because they're so leafy and they get pretty big. I guess this is like pretty big for like a smaller houseplant. They like bright indirect light, which is why it's in this like back corner, which works out for me. And then as far as plant care goes with this guy, it is a little bit on like the more mid-range of maintenance. I would say I have to spray it down, like mist it every once in a while, just because it has such fine leaves, I guess. I don't know. I'm not like a plant expert, so don't take my word for anything. This is just, the best of my knowledge. So feel free to correct me. And I think they like to have moist soil but never soggy, so try and do that. So because of like the angles, I'm not gonna be able to like be in the same frame as it, but I wanted to just briefly talk about my mahogany tree cutting that I have. So right now, as you can see, it's not doing very great. So please, if you have any tips on this. As I was talking about before, my mahogany tree, where my Dracaena marginata is now, died, and I salvaged just this cutting from it, and I repotted it and hopefully to propagate it, but it's not going over very well, and it's droopy and wilting, and if it lived, honestly, it would be really pretty. So I'm hoping that it does. I'm hoping I can save it. But these I don't usually see as a house plant. I think they do better outside generally, and they're also a relatively high maintenance plant because they require that the soil be moist at all times, but again, never soggy. So there's a very fine line there, and it can be tricky. But yeah, I think if I got this plant to live indoors, I would be very happy with it, and I hope it does well because it does look really cute when it's not dead. So, and then the next one I wanted to talk about is my staghorn fern. This guy is also not doing great, so I'm only briefly going to touch on it, but these I think are really cool. They only just became popular in the US a couple years ago. I remember seeing them like on like Pinterest and stuff, and they were really popular in like Korea and just Southeast Asia in general. I think these are really cool. I love how it's like mounted on the wooden board. I think that's such a cool element to add to your space because, if you have such a hard time finding artwork that you like, why not have a plant on your wall? Like, hello, obvious. I really love these. Unfortunately, mine is also struggling right now. So I'm trying to bring it back to life. I think I just need to water it a little bit more and then it'll be okay, hopefully. This should be called a dead plant tour because half of them are like a little struggling. now we've changed locations. We are currently in my bedroom, I guess I would call it. I live in a studio apartment, so it is all kind of one room at the end of the day. Okay, so this plant I'm actually not too sure about. I know it's some kind of philodendron, but I'm not exactly too sure on like the genus of the plant. So if anybody knows, please tell me. But I really love this plant, honestly. This plant has actually been with me for the longest amount of time out of all of the plants in my apartment. This guy has been with me for about a year and a half. Ever since I moved to the Pacific Northwest, this guy has been with me. Very sentimental to me, and I have it in this beautiful pot on a little plant stand in my bedroom. Yeah, if anybody knows what exactly this plant is, please let me know because I'm very curious. I do know it does like bright indirect light, so there is that. All right, so now we are in the corner of my bedroom, and I just want to talk about this plant on my nightstand because it's honestly really cool. It's called a Ficus microcarpa. The common name for it is a Chinese banyan plant. Banyan, I don't know. But it's really unique. I love these. I think I just in general love plants that look like mini trees. I think they're really cute. But I believe this plant symbolizes calmness and prosperity, so I thought, okay, great to have next to my bed while I'm sleeping. And it really livens up the space. I think in my bedroom, I kind of strayed away from having anything too crazy. In the past, I've had these huge plants all over the place, and it's just not pleasant to sleep next to. And you want space on your nightstands for practical things like water, um, and your phone and stuff like that, whatever. Go a little bit more sparse when it comes to putting plants in the bedroom, and especially in this room because it's very challenging because there is no windows or direct light that leads in here, so I have to be very careful about the plants that I do put in here. And I'm very grateful for this specifically. There's like basically a lack of wall back here that leads right into the living room, so there is some light that comes through from the window, as you can see, but obviously that's not going to be enough to support these plants through the wintertime. So I'm going to show you guys this. Just please don't judge me for the clothes that I have. I actually have plant lights in here that I'll leave the closet door open when I leave during the day and plug in the plant light, so these plants and the plants in my bathroom are able to get enough light to survive and thrive. Honestly, I think having a plant light and hiding it a little bit is a better idea than to have no plants at all, because I think one of the biggest reasons why places can feel warm and like home is because they have signs of life. And if there's no signs of life like plants, or there's no signs of life like a human being lives there and it's just a sterile museum, it's not going to feel like home. I hate to break it to you. All right, everybody, we are back in my office because I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about plant styling and pairing plants to different pots. So let's get started here. One thing that I really love to do when I'm picking out plants or pots or whatever is using them as moments for decorative accents or introductions to color. I think a unique pot can really add a lot to your space in regards to texture. Around my apartment, I do have some like stoneware pots that are made out of different natural materials that are a little bit more rough. I have some concrete ones, and then the other ones are porcelain-y, ceramic, whatever. And I think these are really great opportunities to, make something interesting on a lower budget. Obviously, plant pots can get expensive, but one thing that you can do is just go down to Goodwill and look through the section and find a great little plant pot. I've done that so many times and I found some really great ones from there. I really love introducing natural materials through plant pots. If you live in a space that is more on the modern end, this can be really helpful, because a lot of spaces that are modern, they have harsh materials like concrete and just drywall, which is pretty much my apartment. And so I think bringing new kinds of stoneware into play can kind of help warm it up without making it look too contrasting. And I think doing that can also ground your space a lot and make it feel a lot more earthy and a lot more organic, if you want to use that term. Another thing that I really like to play with is size and visual weight. I think one thing that I really like to do, if you haven't noticed this, is I love to pair really like visually heavy pots, so heavy stoneware pots like concrete pots with really dainty light plants. I think it can create a really cool contrast where the plant really stands out in the space and it can almost feel like a sculpture. Another thing that I like to do is, mix in different heights with plants. I think a lot of people, when they're getting their plants, are a little bit afraid of like the really tall plants because, like how are you supposed to style that in your house? But they can add so much. If you have, white walls in your house, I think doing tall plants is great because if you have lots of tall plants, it can almost substitute for art because the leaves are so high, you know what I mean? It creates some kind of visual interest in the space. And this can be especially helpful if you're just moving in somewhere, so you don't have to buy really expensive art immediately or just feel like all that pressure to decorate your walls. And if you're somebody who really loves to fill up all of your wall space and you have like a blank corner in your house, I think adding a really tall plant can really help it feel a little bit less empty. If that makes sense. Something that I would also recommend for your plants is sticking to a general color scheme with your pots. I think obviously mixing it up, but please avoid going on like Amazon and buying these like electric blue or like pastel-y colored pots. They make your space look pretty cheap and they don't really last, and I believe they're also very bad for your plants. You want naturally made pots so they allow like the plants and the roots to breathe a little bit more, like terracotta or something like that. Sticking to a color palette I think is great. In my house I stuck to not a specific color palette, I would say, but more like ceramic. So I don't think you have to stick to a color palette when it comes to ceramics because, they all have a similar general finished look. And I think doing something along the lines of that can be really good. And I think just in long term, plant pots can get pretty expensive. So doing something that is a little bit more timeless on that will really pay off because then you can take it with you wherever you live and you won't get tired of it because who needs to be going out and buying a new plant pot just because it's out of style? Like, that's a little ridiculous. One thing that I think is very worth the investment if you move into a new place is getting a tree. I know this can be very expensive, so obviously right off the bat, you don't need to get one. I think it's more important to have a bed or a couch or whatever, but it can really, really add to your space and it's really important. It really should be at the front of your mind when designing your space. I think it's really great to kind of organize rooms through different focal points and then kind of base the tree's location around that. Personally, for me, I love plants and I love how much life they bring to the space. So I made it so that my tree in my living room is visible right from the front door. It's the first thing that you see. Down the line is my tree. And I think it adds kind of I don't want to say, it's like a grand feeling to the space. I think olive trees are great. Obviously, dracaenas are great if you have a space that gets a ton of light. I believe there's also some variations of like pine trees, pine tree houseplants that look really beautiful. So I think just finding something that speaks to you and something that makes you happy to have in your house is the goal at the end of the day. Just go to your local plant store or botanist or flower shop or whatever. Tell them the conditions of your space, how much light it gets, whatever, what you want. And they can recommend you a plant there and, go off of that, I would say. But I think you should definitely get some plants in your house. If you don't have them, they will just generally improve your life and make you feel better if you're sad. So that's all I'm saying. Anyways, you guys, that is it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you have any suggestions on what you want me to do next, please leave them in the comments. As always, you can find me on Instagram at Cooper Osinski Interiors. You can also check me out on my website at cooperosinski.com. Right now I'm taking consultations with people to help you design your room or your house or whatever, and it's completely pro bono, so it's free. Right now I'm just trying to build up my portfolio to get future clients, so if you want a room design for free, just set up an appointment with me. But yeah, I also have a full apartment tour if you're interested up on my page, so you can go check that out. Otherwise, yeah, I hope you guys have a great Sunday and or whatever day you're watching this. So yeah, all right, bye.